all to. Thank you. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Me too.
Okay, something changed in our settings or something changed in how Zoom is doing things, who knows? But anyway, I want to welcome you to the first meeting of our Western Hort season tonight. Our guest speaker tonight is Renee Shepard, and she's going to be talking about winter edibles, gardening for a second season. As I mentioned to some of the people who have signed on already, this will be the only picture you'll see of Renee because she doesn't have enough bandwidth to do video and show the slideshow. So this is just a slide from her website with a picture of her. And I also seen it already. There's Western Hort website, and look at the homepage underneath the speaker information. You can click and load a PDF of the slide list for the program. Slide list and you like to take notes, or otherwise you can download it later and you'll have information on all the plants she's talking about. So we have to write them down.
Janet, could you ask people to mute themselves?
I'm not going to do that right now because I want people to be able to participate in plant share and ask questions if they want to. We will ask everybody to mute themselves when we're done.
Okay.
Also I want to let you know our next two speakers. The next one is Abra Lee.
It's Abra, she pronounces it.
Abra, thank you. Good thing I learned that before I introduced her. Abra Lee, who's going to be Georgia, virtually, of course, Zoom, and Kenton Seth will be our November speaker, and he will also be a Zoom speaker. We haven't decided for sure, but December will also probably be what we will see. But I also wanted to let you know we have a special program coming in February. It will be Andy Mariani and Charlie Olson, who you might recognize as longtime Santa Clara Valley orchard growers. And they will be moderated in a question and answer session by Robin Chapman, who we had, I think it was about a year ago. She talked about the lost orchards of Silicon Valley, which is her book. But we're asking people submit questions ahead of time if you can, and you can do info@westernhort.org. So anything to do with growing fruit and trees, anything you want to know about the orchards or history of the orchards in the valley, please go ahead and submit your questions and send them to info@westernhort.org. We will start our plant share, which is how we start our meetings. These are plants that people either saw in their gardens and wanted to share. The nice thing about doing it via Zoom is a picture of it. You don't have to bring the actual plant we did in our in-person meetings, or even a piece of the plant. So you can also share plants that you notice out in the wild, or plants that you see in other people's gardens that you thought were really interesting. So feel free to submit. You have to wait till the newsletter comes out. Again, send those to info@westernhort.org anytime, and we will include them in the next slideshow. And if you're not going to be present, if you just share some information about it, then I will the information you give me. If you are, a chance to plants yourself and take questions from everybody. That's why I said you don't necessarily have to turn yourself off. Feel free to ask plant share. And here's our plant share. And the first plant is from my own garden. It's a Saponaria Lempergii Max Free, which is two Mediterranean species of Saponaria. I probably will mangle this house Nectarii, and the other one is Cyprii.
Notes at Stanford, where he just goes into detail and he becomes the world's expert on the topography of Big Basin.
Oh.
Okay, so now let's put him aside for a second. But what he's doing, before we read him, let's go to the next slide.
Your audio on, you need to be really aware.
He cared so much about getting students involved. This is the first ever Stanford class of students and faculty in 1892. And where has he brought them? probably right behind Dylan's office in the middle of the San Lorenzo River. He's brought them on a field trip to see the redwood.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to figure out. Hey, everybody. It's hybrid. Perennial all the way through. It's been blooming for at least 2 months. Tall, 24 inches across.
Janet, can you mute people?
Somebody real back. I was trying to people so they can, but
Teddy, your microphone is active. Teddy.
not who is still on. Maybe that did it.
Sounds like it.
Okay,
Oops.
I found him just by going down the list. But if you want to ask questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Just like I said, be aware if you have anything going on in the background. Also, microphones can pick up sounds. We're getting some microphone static there, I believe. So back to the saponaria. Interestingly, Missouri Botanic Garden, in talking about it, says it doesn't like summer heat or poor drainage, but it gets both in my yard and it seems to do fine. It's been there for at least 15 years. So, because I have kind of clayey soil and it's very rocky river bottom. So that might give it some drainage, and that there are rocks in there, but it's not great drainage, and definitely gets hot here in Campbell, which is where I am. But it's a very satisfactory perennial for the summertime. And then I put this one on here because, I don't know, like me, subscribe to the Pacific Bulb Society blog, but there's been a lot of talk of Zephyranthes, and a bunch of yellow ones have showed up recently, and I've had this one for ages and ages in my yard. This is Zephyranthes citrina. And,
when do you start watering it, Janet?
Mine gets watered pretty much year round.
Oh, okay.
I give it once a week water. You know, the funny thing, I had it for years. I had it in the front yard, and it was getting kind of overgrown by a manzanita, and it wasn't blooming. And then I moved it to a south-facing wall in the backyard, and it seems to be happy there, and it's blooming. So, and it's on a drip system, so it gets once a week water. About, I think it's a 1 gallon dripper, so it gets a gallon once a week. That was not enough for the Zephyranthes candida. That one just kicked up its heels and said, forget it, because a lot more water than that. So, but the citrus fine with that.
You fertilize it at all?
Nope. I think I got that when I was at Yamagami's, so that's been on the ground for like years. So it's interesting. It just kind of hangs in there, and it's finally, once I moved it, it's finally blooming.
Has anyone else grown it? And if you don't water it until, let's say, July or August, does it still bloom? I can't hear anybody.
I guess nobody's responding. I don't know if anybody else is growing it. So yeah, it again, on the reading about it on the Bulb Society page, it says that it, unlike some of the other Zephyranthes, it doesn't offset very readily, which I would agree with. The clump has not gotten very much bigger in probably the 20 years it's been in my yard. And but it says that it reseeds, it produces apomictic seed, but I've never seen any seed or had it reseed itself either. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, at least you got it to bloom.
Yeah, it's blooming, which I'm happy about. And then this is one of our native clematis, the Lagosticifolia. They call this one the creek clematis, or I guess you could say clematis. or the Virgin's Bower. And the other one is Lasiantha, which you call the Chaparral clematis. And those, I like those two common names, even though there are other common names for them, because it kind of illustrates where the two of them grow in nature. Like Ligusticifolia, I've seen mostly along creeks in watersheds. And then the Chaparral clematis is the one you more commonly see up on fairly dry hillsides. And the other difference between the two of them is the Chaparral clematis blooms in the spring. And right now, all you're seeing are the kind of fuzzy seed heads on them. And this one is blooming in the summertime. So it's in nice full bloom right now. And both of them are reasonably drought tolerant. This one's in, it's on the north side of my house on a west facing fence. So it doesn't get super hot sun all day, but it does get some sun. And they like something to climb on. I have netting on the fence they're climbing up, but then they're also climbing up. I have a fringe tree behind that. They're starting to climb up that too, which is kind of nice. I get blooms on the fringe tree that wouldn't be there this time of year because it's a spring blooming tree. I don't know if anybody, both of them are very nice vines. And then this last one is my mystery plant for the week. If anybody knows what this salvia is, it's a really satisfactory salvia, I will say that. A friend bought it for me. It's got to have been in the ground for at least 10 years now. And it blooms all summer long. It's a little more herbaceous looking than many celeries. It's not as woody, say, as the Salvia greggii or some of the other salvias. And fairly strong scent to the foliage. And I basically cut it practically to the ground every winter. And then it comes up in the summertime and grows about 3 feet tall and probably 3 feet across and blooms, like I said, all summer. So if I could figure out what it is, I'd really like to know what this salvia is. I guess Betsy Klebish would really help on that. But she's probably not watching Zoom these days.
Don't think so.
I don't know. I don't even know if I could email her a picture of it. Maybe I'll try that.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody else weighing in? No salvia experts here. Okay. Okay, Judy, you're on.
Oh, okay. So I was telling Janet that there's not much going on in my garden, but I was up in the city. And so I went to the Botanic Garden and saw quite a few things that were interesting. And one of them was the Haemanthus coccineus. And I have one of these plants. I think it bloomed last year. I'm hoping it'll bloom again, but this was at the entry garden to the Botanic Garden, and they were just really in full flower. There were just dozens of them. So I thought I'd share it because it's a nice, supposedly relatively easy to grow Haemanthus.
And they've got it in the ground.
I know, and they cut off all the leaves. It looks like all the leaves are gone. There were no leaves.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised too. Okay. I didn't do much.
It might be one of the ones that blooms before the leaves come out.
Ooh, I'm trying to remember about this one. I thought it had 2 leaves usually. I think they were cleaning up and they probably just went in and just took all the leaves off. It looked like not too far, not too, gosh, what's the word I want to say? That it was done very recently.
Okay.
Okay. This was a neat plant, and I've heard of it before, and it was blooming in the South African garden. And it looks a lot like an aster type of flower, or like a let's see, what's the word I want? Osteospermum, but it is actually a Burkheya purpurea, and Zulu warrior is this particular cultivar. But I thought that was really nice.
Foliage.
That's not the foliage of it. No, no, it is. It is. I take it back. It is the foliage of it. Yeah. It's not very friendly.
In the corner of the picture with the flowers, it looked like there was some of it, which is why I included the picture of the sign, because I figured that was the foliage.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because if you look at the stem, it looks like it's very prickly. Yeah, but I thought it was a really interesting. I tried to grow it in the past, but I've not had any luck. But it's doing very well in the South African garden at the Botanic Garden. Okay, next.
Cisco can grow a lot of things.
I know. Just wondering, does anyone know? I know what it is, but does anyone know the genus? I wouldn't have guessed it in looking at the flower. No? This is a hibiscus. It's Hibiscus trionum. And it's just, it's a very low growing, and you notice it has those kind of puffball kind of buds. But I think it's a kind of low growing, not more than a foot high. But I think the flowers are wonderful, but I would never have guessed hibiscus.
No, I wouldn't either. Is it look like it spreads?
It kind of, it kind of, how can I say, wanders around on the ground level. It doesn't get any taller than about a foot. So it does kind of, scatter, move around on not more than, I was going to say, maybe a couple of feet. So it's not really aggressive, but this is also one that I've tried to grow that I've not had luck with.
Judy?
Yeah. Hi, Daisy.
Hi there. I've grown it in Sacramento, and I kind of view it as a little bit of a weedy plant. It
really
reseed. Yeah, it reseeds.
Okay.
Good conditions, but it is pretty.
Yeah, how wide does yours get?
Oh, probably about a foot.
About a foot, okay.
Yeah.
I guess if it grows in Sacramento, maybe it likes heat.
That may be why.
Oh, it's in San Francisco. Who knows?
Yeah, that's actually also in the South African garden. So that's probably one of the sunniest parts of the Botanic Garden. Okay. And these were the Amaryllis belladonna, and they've got several of these really deep colors as well as the white ones. And the story that Don Mahoney told me is that Bill the bulb man from, is it Watsonville or further south? Anyway, he came and spoke to Cal Horton and brought a bunch of bulbs to sell, and he didn't sell them all. And somebody suggested he donate them to the Botanic Garden, which he did. And that's why they have a really nice stand of a lot of different colors, shades of this deep pink and also the white. But they're in full bloom right now in the Botanic Garden, again, in the South African section. I thought they were very pretty.
Yeah, there's a very nice deep pink. I have some that are a little deeper pink, but they're not that deep a pink.
Yeah, I have some deep pink ones that I got actually from a fellow he used to hybridize a lot of South African bulbs in Santa Barbara. His name was Dr. Duat? And he wrote a book actually about South African bulbs. And my sister got me some small bulbs. It took about 5 years, but they finally did bloom. They're quite nice and dark. So I like the white ones too, actually. Does anyone grow the white one?
I have some.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, as I was saying to you earlier, one of mine seems to have sported and
two
white bulbs out of a clump that started out as pink.
Ooh, that's cool.
They're not blooming this year because I divided them, but.
Okay. See, what else did I have? Oh, I know. Last but not least, my favorite plant probably in the whole Botanic Garden, which is Dyswell polyphylla. And this is in the Trillium family. I first saw it actually in England at, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. The guy, Fergus is the current gardener there. Help me guys, Christopher Lloyd's garden. Yeah. I first saw it there. And actually I bought this plant up in Oregon. I grew it for 10 years in a pot. It would bloom frequently, but not all the time. And I just got tired because it really needed real regular water. So I finally donated it to the Botanic Garden, and they put it in their garden a few years ago. So I go to visit my favorite plant there.
To get somebody else to grow it for you and get it to bloom.
Yeah, well, it just really needs so much regular water, and it's more than I figured. I held on to it for 10 years and it did do its job and bloom a few times. So I figured I should probably pass it on. Plus they used to have it in the Botanic Garden. Evidently, I think it didn't last very long. So I thought they might try it again.
It's great. Yeah. That was your last one? Oh no.
Yeah.
It's just
This is eye candy. I was, somebody suggested going over to the Dahlia Garden, which is right behind the conservatory in Golden Gate Park. And the dahlias are just in full bloom. They're just gorgeous. So this is just for eye candy to just look at the different varieties.
Yeah, we're just gonna breeze through these so you can take a look at some of these.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't names on all of them, but there are a few here that are named.
Mm-hmm.
I just put all the pinks together.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And then there are random other colors here.
Yeah, that Bumble Rumble, I think, was my favorite one of all of them. I really love that one.
It's got a cool name and it's rather unusual looking.
Yeah, yeah.
I personally am partial to single flowers also.
Ah, yeah.
And then a couple of these didn't have names and one just had a number, so.
Right. This one on the left, though, was as big as a dinner plate, easily. I mean, it was huge. It was the largest flower there, I think.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing your trip to the Botanic Garden.
Oh, welcome.
And we're on to Nancy.
Oh, okay. This is a succulent that's edible, Mesembryanthemum crystallinum. It's ice lettuce. I sowed seed back in the 27th of April, and it took forever to germinate. It must have been a couple of weeks. It just seemed like a long time to me. The leaves are used in upper scale salads a lot. You can see the dried leaves in the far left picture. When they're doing well, the leaves are probably 1.5 inches long and 1 inch wide. On the, so the middle picture shows the close-up of the flowers, which I thought are just really cool. And the right is a seed pod. I thought I'd like to try growing these for the Heirloom Expo sometime because I've had a number of requests for them. So since the seeds are pretty expensive, I figured that this year I'd just get as many seeds as I could off the plant. And then in the future, then I'll have more seeds to play with. The flavor is, it's kind of lemony, kind of tangy lemony, and the leaves are really crunchy and very watery. Well, not watery, juicy, I guess is a better description. But it's kind of a cool looking plant that's an edible in honor of the speaker tonight.
Looks kind of like a Dr. Seuss plant, but.
What's that?
Looks like a Dr. Seuss plant.
Oh yeah, that was, I guess there's 5 seedlings there in the pot on the left. I had 5 seeds that germinated.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's tasty in combination with other lettuces. It's really nice and refreshing in a salad.
Sounds interesting to try.
Okay, so this is my success story. A friend asked me to propagate this orange bougainvillea for him because that's his favorite color on earth. It might be the easiest thing on earth to propagate, but it's the first time I've ever tried it. And I took cuttings on June 23rd, and it was blooming at that time, but that's when the new growth was finally in a semi-hard condition. So I took cuttings, I took tip cuttings, and I took heel cuttings. I divided them in half, and I put Hormex number 1 on half and Dip and Grow in a 1:10 ratio on the other half. I wounded the end of all the cuttings. And then I took half of them and put them just in a pot with the sand and perlite, and the other half, the same sand and perlite, but I cut the bottom off of a gallon jug and put it over the pot with the cuttings. And that extra humidity made a really big difference. Let's see, on July 28th, which is just over a month, both of them were rooted, but the ones with the extra humidity probably had twice the volume of roots. And at that point, I potted them into little 2 or 3 inch pots, because Dad always told me not to, you didn't want to overpot something when you first pot it up out of the rooting medium. And then I just repotted them on September 3rd from those 3 inch pots into the gallons. And the cuttings were about 4 inches long. And the ones in the gallons there are over a foot in length. And so I'm just pretty jazzed at how well they've done.
Oh, yeah. It's an unusual color too. It's very pretty.
Yeah. It's Andy Mariani who, his favorite color for flowers is orange. And he's got a plant against one, against his house, I guess. And he wanted more.
You did a great job, and they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And amazing.
Thank you.
Did one of the hormone kind of dips work better than the other?
Both were exactly the same.
Okay, thanks.
And so with how well they rooted, I have a feeling they're pretty easy to root.
Nice, good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What did you do to wound them?
I took a pair of shears that had a real sharp edge, and I just kind of slid it at the bottom of the cutting. So I just cut a little bit off at an angle. Does that make sense?
So you didn't mash it in any way or bruise it. You just cut a slit in it.
Not a slit, I cut a slice off of it.
Oh, okay, got it.
So you kind of cut off one side.
Yeah, I cut off one side. I didn't make a wedge. I didn't cut a wedge on 2 sides, but I cut a slice off one side.
Well, that's good, because I've never known what they mean by wounded. You know, that's a pretty broad term.
Yeah.
I think that just increases the surface area for the rooting hormone to work on.
Yeah, I think the same.
Any other questions? Another mystery plant.
So I'm pretty sure it's a Mesembryanthemum. It's a nice plant of some type. And this is another plant of Andy's that I started a flat for him. It's done really well for him in Morgan Hill. Rarely gets watered and just has a really nice orange flower. He doesn't remember the cultivar name. And just for curiosity's sake, if anybody recognizes it, I'd love to know the name.
Okay, maybe.
And then if there's time, I have one more thing I want to share. I didn't send a picture, okay, but my cousin gave me, let's see if I can hold it up. It's a copper mesh. It comes in a tube, and it's a mesh. I can kind of open it up. My problem is that there's rats that are getting my tomatoes. And I know a lot of people have problems with pests. And he got this for something he couldn't remember, maybe to do with snails, but he thought maybe since I don't have a lot of tomatoes this year, I could slide, make a cut, slide it around the fruit, and then cut it, and then clothespin it closed at the bottom. And then the I don't know where it shows there. Hold it back. The rats or squirrels or whatever would have a difficult time really biting through this copper mesh. So I haven't tried it yet, but I can report back.
Yeah, I was recently looking at that very product online.
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of trouble with rats myself this summer. I made mesh bags that were, 4 or 5 inch squares, and made them into drawstring bags and put it around all my fruit. And it worked on some things. It worked on my avocados last spring. It worked on my Satsuma mandarins last spring. It worked on this summer. It's worked on my peaches this summer, but they ate all my pluots. So it's and they chewed right through the bag. So it's obvious they can chew them, but for some reason it does tend to slow them down a bit. But then be able to chew through that. And I wonder whether you think you could sew that.
Oh yeah, by hand, sure.
Is it lightweight enough you could put it on a sewing machine?
Not my sewing machine. If you had a like a yard sale type sewing machine.
I mean, one you wreck.
Yeah, one you don't care about. Yeah, I think you could sew it, sure.
Okay.
You might want to take and put a piece of like tissue paper or really thin fabric, and then the mesh, and then another piece of tissue or whatever, so that the mesh doesn't get drawn down into the feed dog or up into the needle.
Oh, yeah.
As it's going through.
Right. That's a good idea. I may think about it. Thank you. So any other questions? Oh, Amy Codia says the rats are eating the small pumpkins at their school garden, and she's looking for ideas. I think Renee actually has some suggestions about rats, and we are kind of...
No, that's I haven't got for rats, except kill them.
So we move on to
also running, we have John Cox, a businessman who ran against Gavin Newsom 4 years ago and actually was crushed by Newsom, 62 to 38%. He's running again. We also have Caitlin
Jean,
Jenner.
your speaker is active. Jean Struthers.
Yeah. 29-year-old YouTube entrepreneur.
There you go.
If Carol, if you would go through and mute everybody if you can. And then also turn off videos. That would be great, because we don't want Renee to be interrupted. As I said, for those of you who were earlier, we're not going to see Renee's face, but she does have lots of other things for us to look at. For those of you not familiar with her, Renee Shepherd has been in the seed business for over 30 years. She's been well known for searching the world for some of the best seed varieties, testing them in her gardens near Felton, and cooking and developing recipes to best use her produce. And tonight she will share with us her tips for planting vegetables in your garden now for late fall through spring harvests. And we would like to welcome Renee Shepherd at this time.
Well, thank you, everybody. First, let me share my screen. Good, that worked. Amazing. Well, I want to start by saying that was fun. Thank you. I need to join. I can't imagine why I don't belong, but I'm going to join. That's one result of this of this meeting. I, as she said, run a seed company and have for a long time, and we concentrate on really good tasting vegetables that are easy to grow from all over the world, so that you can cook all kinds of different things. And we also sell lots of flowers, many old-fashioned varieties, single colors of a lot of common varieties, and seeds for pollinators. All of us who are in the Home Garden Seed Company, both some produce seeds, but most of us buy seeds from reliable sources, both here and abroad, with a heavy concentration in Europe, because a lot more people garden from seed there. And seeds are brought in and then evaluated and packaged and put in packets and sent out. Our company is a little bit unusual because like a few other companies, like Johnny's would be one, and High Mowing would be another, and Territorial may be another, but we're all unusual in that we actually trial everything that we either do sell or are going to sell. And we have a big trial garden in Felton. All the pictures I'm going to show you are from there. And we also have one back in Easton, Vermont, so we can test everything out in a very cold climate. So I wanted to say before I start with the slides that there are no genetically engineered or modified seeds in the home garden market, and never will be any. So that's not a thing anybody needs to worry about. Many of us sell both heirlooms that are specific for home gardens because they have qualities that make them special, as well as many hybrids, which are very special for home gardens. For example, there's very few brassica or cole crops that I wouldn't choose a hybrid over an heirloom. I wanted to ask if I need to define those terms or if everybody is well familiar with the difference between an heirloom and a hybrid and an open pollinated seed. Everybody good?
I think we're good, Renee.
Okay, then I'll just move right in.
Just pause for just a second there because you were asking a question.
Oh, sorry.
Of course, of the comment, if anybody has questions, feel free to type them into the chat, and we will be going through your questions at the end. Sorry to interrupt you.
So I want to start by showing you our trial garden here in Felton. It's really all raised beds, been organic for many years, and we grow everything just like a home gardener would grow them because, of course, that's who our friends and customers are. A few more pictures of the trial garden. This is obviously in spring. We have a real eye to color, not only because it's pretty and attractive, but the more color in your garden, the more nutrients and antioxidants in your food. So this is an example of the kind of trials we're doing. In the foreground there are some hybrid marigolds we were comparing. And in the back is some cucumbers and then some cosmos. And that's my horse watching very longingly at the garden, but this is later in the season. So we really do try everything. And based on the experience that we have trialing it, that's how I choose what we're going to put in packets, bring in large quantities, ship to our warehouse, which happens to be in Colorado, which is in the middle of the country, which is good for shipping to customers all over, and put it in packets. So I write all the copy on the packets, and we have a person who does full-time horticultural advice. So we try to really know what we're selling. One more picture. There's a Cosmos trial. We were looking for short ones, which we found. So I'm going to start out talking about what you can grow in fall through winter in our climate zone. Actually, many people feel like the garden's kind of over in September, October. The tomatoes are starting to really produce like crazy, and peppers and eggplants and all the really summery things. But then a lot of people think you should just plant a cover crop or put away the garden, and nothing could be farther than the truth. And the reason is because the soil is a lot warmer there, and so it's easy to get things to germinate. There's actually less pest and disease that happens as the weather cools, and seeds germinate quicker and grow a little slower, so it's a much more leisurely pursuit. And so do weeds grow slower. So I want to start out with vegetables, and I'm going to start out with beans. This will be alphabetical, and there is a slide list if any of these things interest you. I'm going to share the slide list so you can see what they are. This is something we're all familiar with, fava beans. A lot of people grow them not only as a food crop, but as a cover crop. I've found this one, which is actually from England, that is shorter than other fava beans and earlier, because one of the problems with fava beans is they get really tall and then they fall over and they can be pretty ugly and hard to harvest. The other thing to know about fava beans is the tip of the beans are edible in salads, just like any bean shoot, which are good. And they're very delicious, well worth growing, harvesting, highly nutritious, make great pate, like a hummus kind of thing, or you can saute them. You can steam them with fresh herbs, in little olive oil with fresh herbs and garlic. They're fabulous. And they add nitrogen to your soil because they fix nitrogen in the soil. So that's one. If you have a bed that you're not going to do much with, and you want a lot of biomass, and you want some extra protein in your diet, and you want something that really gives you a lot of bang for the buck, plant some fava beans this fall. All root crops can be planted in fall, by which I mean September and October are good months to plant them. So I wanted to show you the different kinds you can start with if you're starting from seed. These are baby beets. Here's 5 colored beets. Remember, the more different colors that you eat, there are different antioxidants that kind of go with the color. So it's always a good idea to try different kinds. These are 5 different colored beets, and as you can imagine, they look terrific when you roast them, which is, I can't imagine doing anything else with beets anymore. These are golden beets. They do keep their color when you cook them, and their tops are particularly tender. Beet greens is something you don't see in the market much. Some farmers markets sell them, but they're tender and tasty and kind of nutty, just lightly steamed or sauteed, and they're delicious. So that's an added bonus of growing beets. And here are some. This beet was developed because everyone is roasting beets now, and this beet was developed because it has exceptionally high sugars. So it's sweeter than other beets, and it's absolutely lovely roasted and then put into a salad, sliced up, put into a salad with maybe some Granny Smith apples and some pecans and a light vinaigrette. Really good. And here's what that Merlin looks like when it's roasted. Really deep, rich red, so you know it's really healthy and delicious. The secret with growing beets, if you haven't grown them before, and here's the striped chioggia, is to make sure the soil is firm over the seed. When they come up, you need to thin them several times because each beet, if you look at it, you want it to grow so it's, 2, 3, 4 inches across. They need room between them. So be sure to thin them, and then you can eat the thinnings. These chioggia beets are very popular now, but they used to be pulled out of the fields as an off type or a sport, but now we've found that they're delicious. They tend to be sweeter than other beets too. So plant some different colored beets and have some fun with them. You can pickle them, you can roast them, you can eat them in salads and enjoy the greens. Then this is a good time to plant broccoli. Now it's a little late you'd want to get started right away if you're going to grow it from seed. And because your garden is still full of tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants and so on, for any of the brassica or cole crops that you want to grow through fall and winter, start them in a flat or seed starting containers. You can certainly just make sure they're deep enough and big enough to accommodate our weather, which is really very hot. And you might want to start the seeds outdoors in a location that has morning sun and afternoon shade. So they know, because of course it's very hot now. And you'll find that they will germinate nicely. If you wait a little, and by October, by the middle to the end of this month, I'd probably want to buy some starts just because you want to get a little head start on that. And there's lots of different kinds of broccoli to try. This is a real nice crop, that variety that grows quite quickly. And this is broccoli rabe. It's an Italian specialty. It makes these tiny little florets, and when you harvest it, you harvest the stem and the leaves and the florets. You throw it in some boiling water and blanch it in boiling water just to bring in the water to a boil, and then immediately put it in cold water. And then you saute it in olive oil with a little garlic, and you can add add a little water and steam till it's tender, and then add some nice chilies or hot sauce, and you'll find it's delicious and very nutritious. It's harder to find in the market and extremely easy to grow in cool fall weather. And you'll get a lot from a packet of seed. Why not grow some Napa cabbage? Everyone's interested in fermenting and making kimchi, which is really very easy to do. This is a baby variety. It grows about 8 inches tall, which means it grows very quickly, avoids most pest and disease, and again, comes up quickly and grows fast. Now, the trick in growing all these brassica family members is to feed them. We feed everything in our trial garden. All the vegetables get fed about once a month, and certainly not at least once a month. And all brassicas like to have a hit of nitrogen when they're actively growing. We use a good organic fertilizer. We like Sustain or Dr. Earth or anyone, whichever you like. Simply adding compost to your garden is good for its tilth, but it doesn't really add the nutrition your vegetables need. And you can grow cabbages, but if you want baby cabbages, this is a little one from Japan called Pixie, and each one goes as big as a big hand. You slice them in half and you've got an instant meal for two. Cabbage is very underrated because when it's fresh from the garden, it'll keep in the fall. It'll sit in the garden for almost all the winter. It can take light frost, so you can harvest it as soon as the heads get firm up. And if you just slice it up and saute it in butter and olive oil and then add some fresh chopped dill, it's just delicious. And here is a European specialty. These are real popular in Germany, and we're starting to see them here. It's called a sweetheart or conehead cabbage. They're very mild tasting, and they're really unique looking. And you could start them right away now. Again, start them out. Don't start them directly in the stall. Start them in seed starting containers where you can keep an eye on them and transplant them when they have 2 or 3 sets of true leaves. By that time, it'll be a little cooler at night, and they ought to do better. Now I'm going through the root crops, as you can see. These are baby carrots for your first fall crop because they'll finish up fast. And then again, reminding for them, starting like a broken record, but the more color, the more nutrition. Purple is the color that has a lot of antioxidants that's being written about, which is why people are eating so many blueberries these days. But purple carrots are a much older variety than orange carrots, as it turns out. And white carrots date back from the 16th, 17th century. These are all great varieties that grow quickly, and look how attractive they are. So plant some carrots. You've got a nice long window to do so. Be sure to thin them because carrots need plenty of room. And these are some giant carrots you can grow in fall. This is called King Minos. They're Imperador kind, the kind you see in the grocery store in bulk. They're very sweet, and you can grow them too. And then if you have very clay soil, you can still grow carrots. These are little round ones. When they're finished, they're about the size of a ping pong ball or a big walnut. And they were developed to grow in the muck fields outside of Paris. And there's still one company in France that sells these round carrots, and that's all they sell, which I think is kind of interesting. This is a little short stuff. It's a little carrot that another one good for a clay-like soil because they get big and plump, but they don't go down too deep. And then fall is also a good time to plant cauliflower. This is one you want to start in a flat or seed starting containers. Make sure they're at least a couple inches across and tend them carefully. You want to get cauliflower from a seed starting, from the time you start it into a seedling into the ground when it's no more than 4 or 5 weeks tall. If you ever grow cauliflower and they just form buttons, that's because you waited too long to put them in the ground. And I certainly invite you to buy starts if that's a little easier because the weather's so hot. But if you want to grow from seed, it's time to get started with them. And this year, we'll be seeing more of this. It's a purple cauliflower called Purple Crush. This was developed in Korea that keeps its purple color when you cook it, which is kind of cool. And now I want to talk about some greens. And the first green that everyone is familiar with is chard. But did you know you can grow chard as a cut and come vegetable where you sow it really thickly, like grass seed, and when it gets 3-4 inches tall, you just cut the tops off, leaving about an inch atop the roots, and water it, feed it once, and it'll grow again. So you can have, this is very good in salads, or you can quickly stir fry it or braise it. And that's a really fast crop, and you can sow it now, and you could sow it next month, and it'll stand for you really nice in the garden. And here's showing what I mean. See, she's cutting off the tops, but leaving the crowns, and it'll grow a couple times. You can do this with chard, kale, lettuce, and a lot of other crops for a huge amount of food out of a very small space. So if you only have a small bed to devote to fall and winter gardening, grow some of these cut and come again crops. You can also grow most of these things in containers. Here's a golden chard that's really lovely and very ornamental, and fall and winter is an excellent time to do it. It can stand pretty cold weather. Also, there's, chard comes in many colors. Here's one of my favorites. It's startlingly yellow and amazingly neon magenta. So, in fall, as there's less color in the garden, it's a pleasure to have these. And this is a newer one called Peppermint Stick. And as you can see, they're really striped, and it's really fun to have it at Christmas. Now, I also want to mention collards, which is a crop we all associate with the South, but collards are actually more nutritious than even kale is. And you can cut the leaves, take them off the stems and steam it, or you can simply stir fry it or saute it, add a little broth or water and steam it till it's tender. And it is really sweet and delicious, great with when it's cooked, you add a little sprinkle, little fresh orange juice or lemon juice over it. It's highly nutritious with a lot of antioxidants, vitamins, calcium. It's a whole package nutritionally. It stands beautifully through the winter and is particularly easy to grow. And I think more people ought to grow them. Don't forget to be sure to thin it, because as you can see, each plant gets pretty big, and you can cut the outside leaves and it'll come again. And if you make smoothies, this is a good one. Fall is the time to plant bulbing fennel. A lot of people try and plant it in spring, which can be touchy because it likes to bolt in warm weather. So you can start it. The important thing about fennel is whether you start it and plant it out or plant it in places to make sure the plants are at least 4 to 6 inches apart. They really like room, and they like to be fed, and they like a rich soil, or feed them maybe every 3 weeks, and you'll get some nice big bulbs like this. It doesn't do too well in frost. So if you're somewhere that gets frost, put it, then you need to get it going right away. But otherwise, if you're in a frost-free area, it stands well in the ground. Asian greens are something that love cool fall weather. This is tatsoi. This is rosette tatsoi. It's lovely, as you can see, really dark blue-green, very ornamental, really pretty in containers. Looks almost like a sea anemone, but it's a sweeter green, and when it's young, you can use it in salads, or you can saute or stir fry it or steam it. It's delicious and really colorful and healthy, and loves fall weather and will hold well and stay sitting there in the garden. As the weather gets cooler, plants slow down, so they hold at the ripe stage or the ready to cut stage for 2 or 3 times longer than they did in spring. There's what they look like. Aren't they beautiful? And don't forget common Asian vegetables like pak choi. This is a green stem one. You can have this to eat in maybe 35 to 42 days. And you can plant some now, and you can plant some next month and get a couple crops in fall. It's very tender. And the secret with this is just cut them in half and heat up some peanut oil and saute them really quickly with some garlic and soy sauce, and sprinkle some chopped toasted peanuts on them, or use them in any number of ways. And they're one of the fastest crops. Here's another picture of it. And when you have in a garden bed of this, you can harvest them, the young thinnings, and eat them whole. And this is one I'd like to recommend to grow by that cut and come again method, where you grow it and then cut it off, leaving 1 inch. This is a mixture of beet and chard. It's a braising mix, by which I mean you put some oil in a pan, you saute it up till it wilts, and then you add a little bit of broth or water's fine too, and then just steam it till it's tender. This is sweet and delicious, very healthy, very fast, and will hold for 6 or 8 weeks in the garden. So this is a braising mix. So braises is something we don't do that much here, but It means to cook it in a little bit of water, kind of fry and steam it at the same time. Here are some things that are special. You can only grow in the fall winter garden. This is radicchio and escarole and early on David.
It's about winter gardening.
Oh, Midsummer Murders is on.
Sorry?
I'm not gonna
say something really weird at a press conference, and everyone's
Whoops.
like, talk about it. It's the same thing everything. Trump. He talks about
What
every
happened?
gentleman gets Trump's autograph. Yes.
Fergita, your microphone is on. Fergita.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay.
Just quickly, if anybody has questions, please type them in the chat.
This is another trio of green things that grows in fall and winter and will hold through the whole winter. You can eat this literally for months. You plant these in the fall. I sell them as a mix. You thin them out so that the three kinds of plants have enough room. Escarole, the one on the left, really doesn't get enough attention from us here. You do see it. It's an Italian vegetable that's eaten throughout Europe. You do see it in markets that cater to a population that seeks it out, but you don't see it that much, which is a shame because it's the sturdiest, most cold tolerant salad green there is. And you can also braise it, make soup out of it. The famous Italian wedding soup is an escarole soup with little meatballs made out of ground pork, or I use turkey, and then with some carrots and onions and Parmesan cheese. So you can make soup out of it, and you can eat it as a salad. It's got a lot of rich flavor. I love it. And then frisee, you're probably also familiar with, makes a lovely salad with some citrus in the middle of winter and some nuts. And then radicchio, when you grow it in winter, it's very sweet and delicious. Here's frisee all by itself. This is a French variety. It's very sweet. The colder it gets, the better it tastes. And mustards are something as we think is hot and spicy, but in winter, they're much milder. This is a mix of Asian mustards that you can cut and come again, grow and eat as a fresh salad. Because there's so many mustards are members of the Brassica family, they're very rich in nutrients and cancer-fighting antioxidants. So it's really good salad, both good for you and delicious. And if you like frisee and mustards, these are a combination of ruby, a purple and green combination that you can grow, and it's gorgeous on a plate. Really good with some goat cheese. And you can also grow our stir-fry blend. We sell this both conventional and organic seed. This is another one you grow quickly. You can probably plant it in September and October, or you can just plant it, cut it, and let it come again. And you pick it at this young stage, heat up the wok, and you're in business. That's what it looks like. Now, everyone has enjoyed kale for a multitude of reasons. But instead of growing whole plants, I went to Italy and found this particular kale that doesn't get hairy roots or get tough when it's very young. So you can cut it and grow it by the cut and come again method I showed you. And then you can use it in salads. And fresh baby kale with a peanut dressing with lime juice in it and is really good. Peanut lime dressing. And on the other hand, if you want to grow full-size kale, lacinato, which I think most people have seen in the stores or eaten and enjoyed, grown in the garden, is one of the most beautiful and winter cold tolerant. And this is a new one called Mars Landing because I got to name it and I thought it looked like something you'd find on Mars, but it is particularly sweet flavored. And because it's so dark purple, really, again, it has extra health benefits. This is Portuguese kale, which is a different kind of kale that in Portugal they use in a soup with chorizo. And it's sweeter than a lot of kales and very, very cold tolerant and gets to be big heads that you can eat from for months. And then there's Darkibor curled kale. This is Dutch and it is really good. And it's a very beautiful plant as well. As you can see, we thought so because we decided to treat it like a flower. Then kohlrabi, if you're not familiar with kohlrabi, it's getting a lot more popular. These bulbs, when you peel them, have a greeny white flesh and taste kind of like a turnip crossed with an apple. They're very mild and sweet. And this is a combination of colors. Interestingly enough, this vegetable is very popular in Germany and Japan, which I think is interesting. That's where I can get seed, either from Japanese seed suppliers or German ones. You sow the seed, you thin them out, make sure they get fed, and you just stand back and watch them grow. They hold well in the garden in fall. They make a wonderful snack if you cut them, peel them, and use them. Try them with dips, particularly with hummus. They have practically no calories. In fact, I'm pretty sure the more you eat, the more, they're probably minus calories. So they're really delicious, and they're a lot of fun to grow with kids. They're also called, they look like tops and flying saucers. So a lot of people call them flying saucer vegetables. That's what the inside looks like. And you would peel the skin off to eat them and use them with dips. And then here's a mixture of baby leaves, another lettuce mix I wanted to show you. If you don't have raised beds or you want to grow in containers for any number of good reasons, there's lots of lettuces that lend themselves to that. This is a baby romaine that grows about 8 inches tall, and it's lovely and easy to grow through the fall and winter, will hold through the coldest weather. Here's another cut and come again for tiny, delicate baby leaves, and this is so much better than the baby leaf mix you buy at the store. It's sweeter and milder and nuttier. And you can grow it in containers if you want. It's very attractive. And here's one that has a lot of reds in it. And then here, on the other hand, is growing lettuces to their full magnificence, by which I mean that you start them while it remains real hot. Again, I would start them out of the soil where there's some sun in the morning and shade in the afternoon, and then plant them when they're a couple inches tall. And then definitely protect all your fall planted vegetables, by the way, from birds who are very predaceous at this time of year. So you do need to put some hoops over them and then stretch bird netting. That is one problem of fall gardening, is birds are very interested in these things. These are a butterhead. They're very rich and buttery flavor and delicate and kind of melt in your mouth, and they're beautiful. You just need to give them enough room to grow to maturity. And here's what that one looks like when you cut it. With a blue cheese dressing, this can be to die for. And on the other hand, if you're growing in containers and don't have a lot of room, we have little garden babies, which are baby butterhead lettuces. So you can see all this diversity is what you get when you grow from seed, instead of picking up a 6-pack of whatever the wholesale grower decided to put out there. You could try all these different colors. This is called Flashy Troutback. It's an heirloom. It stands up to both heat and cold. And this is a very old French lettuce called Merveille de Quatre Saisons, because it's the marvel of the 4 seasons. Like, can stand up to heat, can stand up for cold, will sit there for months waiting for you to enjoy it. In the winter, not in the summer. This is from Israel, Jericho lettuce, because it can, and it's it's a little lighter color than most romaines and much sweeter and never leathery or tough. And this is another container variety called, it's a little gem type, but with the ruby leaves. So if you take one of those heads and cut it in half, you've got 2 beautiful little individual salads. And this is called Sea of Red for its color. So lettuce can be just as pretty as any perennial plant or any flower, if you ask me. And then this is something that you can only grow in winter. This is mâche, or corn salad. You plant it in the fall. It loves cold weather, and it will produce these little rosettes in early spring. And they are very buttery flavor. And traditionally, they're eaten with sieved over hard-boiled eggs and some feta cheese and olive oil. It's really delicious. And then this is a good time to plant scallions. These come with both red skins and white skins. The red is not throughout the little bulb, but they're very eye-catching in the garden. This is called the Italian scallion because you can grow these and eat them at this stage, or you can let them get bigger and slice them up, and they'll hold for months, and they're very sturdy, and they give you a lot of scallion for the planting. You can plant a couple square feet of this and have enough to last you through till spring. So now I'm going to talk about peas. I think you can start planting peas. You can plant them for the next month. If you have never grown traditional English potted peas for shelling out, you're in for a treat because they are so good and you never see them in the market. Because when you do see shelling peas at the store, they're always too old and tough. When you pick these and shell them out, they're like candy and you probably won't get any indoors. So try some. It is something only gardeners can have. And this is a snap pea, where you let the peas swell in the pods and then eat the whole thing. But this is a variety especially for containers, so you can have them on your patio and go out and snack on them. They need we use these short tomato cages and it holds them up really well. And that is a more traditional snap pea. Those ones get about 6 feet tall if you want to grow them on a trellis. And then, of course, there's snow peas, which are flat potted and you don't allow the peas to swell. All of these can be planted for fall and will fruit up nicely later this fall. So now I want to show you some radishes. In fall, radishes stay in the ground. They don't bolt. They don't get hot. They don't get worms. They're so much easier to grow and they're delicious. A lot in Holland, they take these little sweet radishes, they slice them up and take brown bread or pumpernickel bread, spread it with unsweetened butter, and then the sliced radishes and then a little sprinkling of salt. Try that. That's really good. This is Easter egg with 5 different colors. This is 5 color radishes. These are English in origin, but why just grow red ones when you can grow all of these? They're beautiful. Actually, radishes are good sauteed with a little sesame oil and sesame seeds on them too. There's lots of things you can do with them beyond, we always relegate them to a salad. These are French breakfast radishes that are really pretty and unique. And these are pink radishes. This is an old heirloom. So you can imagine if you grew 3 of those varieties, how beautiful they are. And then don't forget rutabagas, a vegetable not all of us have grown. If you haven't tried it, they're sweet. They kind of taste like a turnip with a sweet, rich flavor and hard to describe, but maybe a turnip cross with a winter squash, and you roast them and then you peel them. You can also roast them in slices and they'll crisp up on the outside. And they're really easy to grow. And this is about the size you harvest them. They're also called Swedes. And then don't forget spinach. Spinach grows so much better in the fall. It doesn't bolt. It doesn't argue with you. It sits there patiently waiting for you to eat it, and it will last a really long time. This is grown as a baby leaf by the cut and come method. This is one called Oriental Giant that likes cold weather, and the leaves get maybe 10 inches across. They're just huge. And this is one called Summer Perfection that's also good for fall. As you can almost see how thick and succulent those leaves are. It just makes fantastic salads. This is something that's just starting to appear in stores. These are from Japan. They're baby turnips, and they're no bigger than a quarter or maybe a 50-cent piece. They're sweet and delicious, and you can roast them or you can saute them. The greens are good, but they're really good just sliced up and sauteed in a little, not olive oil, would use grapeseed oil or peanut oil and little sesame seeds. They're wonderful, kind of a new taste that you wouldn't have been familiar with. And here's a more traditional turnip, which are really nice fall vegetables to roast. So you can grow turnips and rutabagas along with your winter squash and your beets and your carrots, and you can cut them up and roast them all for really good fall meals. Okay, a few herbs for fall growing. This is something you'd plant now to bloom next spring. And not now. I'd wait till we had some good rain to plant this breadseed poppy, so called because the pods don't open so the seeds stay intact and you can harvest them. If you've never harvested your own poppy seed, once it's dried in the pod, it's really rich and flavorful. And this is another edible poppy. The pods are still green here. You basically can enjoy the flowers early next spring. They get tall, 3.5, 4 feet tall. Pollinators are mad for them, and they're gorgeous. And then you get all this poppy seed. Here's arugula, the regular Italian kind you're probably familiar with. In winter, it stays young longer. Here's runway, also the annual arugula, and it was developed for salad mixes because, as you can see, with the serrated edges, it holds the dressing better. If you grow a little of these kinds of baby arugulas, pair them with some corn, raw corn in the cob. You cut the corn kernels down and combine it with peppery arugula, and then shave some Parmesan over it, and then dress it with half olive oil and half mild vinegar. It's really a good salad. This is rustic arugula. A lot of people like to grow this because it lasts for a long time, but it can get very hot. In the fall, it won't get that hot, and you can enjoy it for a much longer period. It's slightly different species than the annual one. And finally, this is wasabi arugula. It was discovered by a Nebraska breeder. He wasn't planning on it, but he bred it and tasted it. It tastes exactly like wasabi, if you like wasabi. It is in the same species as rustic arugula, so it's a little slower to germinate, but it holds well in the fall garden. If you like wasabi, you're going to love this. And then here's another fall winter vegetable. It's chervil. If you've never eaten it, it looks something like Italian parsley, but much, much more delicate. And it has a little anise hint to it. And it is delicious. Whoops, let me go back. It's delicious with carrots and root vegetables. Very, very delicate and wonderful in salads. Hopefully it will self-sow in your garden to come back again. It only really appears, it's very ephemeral in winter and very early spring, but well worth growing. And then finally, chives. We sell a really fine-leafed one. It's milder and sweeter, and they're something you can plant in fall. This is garlic chives, really tastes like garlic. If you don't like to get your hands full of garlic smell, grow some garlic chives. It is used widely in Japanese and Korean cuisine. You eat it fresh. And then cilantro. This is the season to start thinking about planting cilantro as soon as the nights cool down and the days start to wane. Cilantro will grow readily and hold for a nice long time. And this is Vietnamese cilantro. It's lacier, and you can eat it when it forms flowers even, and has a little more lemony tang. And this is dill. This is a season to plant some dill. It holds beautifully in cool fall weather and is a very underrated salad addition. You can add this in handfuls to your salads, and you'll really love it. And then, of course, large leaf Italian parsley. We have a variety from Italy that's really, really sweet and nutty. And you can try, when you make a green salad, to put in at least 2 or 3 handfuls of parsley. It's got a lot more vitamin A and vitamin C than a lot of other vegetables, and it really heightens the flavor of a salad. Also, if you have a kitty, grow some cat greens in fall. These come up in like 5 to 10 days, and cats love them. You can grow it outside or in a container indoors. And now quickly, I want to do some flowers. Calendulas can be planted for fall and winter bloom in our climate. Here's another variety called lemon and orange twist that is shorter and grows great in containers. And then foxgloves, they'll bloom in the spring, but you can sow them through the fall. And larkspur, beautiful spring flower that you can plant in the fall, maybe in October, November, and it'll sprout, grow root system, and bloom in spring from seed. These are Victorian posy. These are these elaborate pansies that are just gorgeous. You don't see them in garden centers, so you have to get them from seed. The seed is from Italy and France, and they're just beautiful. And that's something else you can sow in fall to plant out, and they'll bloom in early spring. Snapdragons actually do better in our climate if you start them in fall, get a nice root clump and a rosette of leaves, and then in spring they'll last a lot longer. These are Chantilly snapdragons, and this is summer flame. Look at the colors on these. This is, again, Japanese flower breeding in Japan. They grow these 3 or 4 feet tall and they sell each stem for $12 or so. And then finally, we specialize in sweet peas. Sweet peas, annual sweet peas are planted in fall, late fall. You can plant them as late as November. They grow through the winter. They'll send up maybe a couple inches. Make sure you protect them from the slugs and snails. And then in spring, they'll really take off. They need a trellis. These are all climbers. This is the most fragrant sweet pea. It smells like jasmine and orange blossoms, but never cloying. You can't replicate the scent. And this is a short one, only grows 3 feet tall. All the rest I'm going to show you are tall. This is Pastel Sunset. This is Perfume Delight. This is classic, huge, big, blousy blooms. Spencer Ruffled, they were actually, this was first found, this sport was first found on the Earl of Spencer, Diana's, I think, grandfather estate, and there's many, many colors, and they're magnificent. This is Strawberry Fields. This is Zinfandel. This is one of those you pick a bouquet and the scent will fill a room. And this, I wanted to end by the perennial sweet pea that you see growing as a weed. They're not fragrant. They're a different species, but they are called, you know, poor man's orchids because they look like little orchids. The ones you see growing in wild next to roads are usually that magenta, but we sell this in 3 colors. There's a violet, the magenta, and a white. Their virtue is that they form tubers underground, and you can control them and make them into a hedge that you can count on to bloom every year. So I do like them a lot. So plant some sweet peas this fall, tend them to the extent of keeping snails and slugs off them and birds, and you'll be rewarded next April, May with just splendid bouquets that you can cut for 6 weeks. And there's no one who doesn't like a bouquet of sweet peas in the world, I think. And then don't forget things you may take for common. Fall's a time to plant little Johnny jump ups. They will self-sow, which is not a bad thing because they're unobtrusive, jolly, and make you feel good. And they are edible. You can pick the blossoms, beat up some egg white, and paint them with a paintbrush and dip them in superfine sugar and make little candied flowers if you like. And they're so cute. Look at these. And then I want to finish up by switching gears a little bit. If you don't plant a full garden, but you want to improve your soil, add to the till of your soil, provide habitat for beneficials, then grow. This is also the season to, if you want to overwinter with either Kodiak mustard, which has been proven to really be sort of, so to speak, a soil cleanser. It helps with a lot of soil diseases if you plant it year after year. It adds tilth to the soil. It's a really good one to plant. Or you can plant a cover crop mix, which has 4 or 5 components, some of which are deeper rooted, some of which are shallow rooted, some of which fix nitrogen, some of which just add biomass. Now, we cover crop a lot of our beds where we're not growing for fall, and we have found that it has added significant organic matter to the soil. It protects the soil from the winter rains we hope to get, and it benefits the bed in every way. And we have been able to really measure soil fertility growing immensely. In the spring, you can either weed whack it down and cover it with black plastic. You can weed whack it down, rake it up, and compost it. Or you can weed whack it down if you start a little early and turn it in. So there's lots of ways to turn it in and amend the soil with it. So, and we have videos on our website showing all those methods. So cover crop the beds that you don't plant for fall. You will be more than tremendously rewarded. And a lot of these will provide some bloom and provide food for pollinators as well. This is what our website looks like. Right now we're featuring a bunch of saffron bulbs and garlic and things you can actually plant for fall. And I think that's it. So I'm ready to, hopefully I've inspired you to think about using the garden, growing some edibles and some flowers for next spring and some herbs to use all winter. I used to get always invited to a woman who I only saw a couple times a year, but she wanted me to come really a lot to her Thanksgiving bash. And it turned out she just liked the salads because I always have big fall and winter garden had a huge, be able to bring a big salad with many, many ingredients. And that was my main attraction. But you'll be amazed at how at Thanksgiving, you'll be able to provide half the meal from your garden if you just start planting pretty soon, right now.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Renee. We have a few questions here. We will go through those here. Starting with one from Amy Cody. She wants tips for growing carrots in raised bed gardens. She didn't have great results this spring and summer in her raised bed, and she wants to know if it's too porous and fluffy. Should she add compost, soil, fertilizer? She wants to know what to do.
Well, for growing carrots, you do need soil that that is fluffy. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but carrots are slow to germinate and you must keep the bed evenly moist. They can take 2, even 3 weeks to germinate. So if you want to, if you're worried about them staying evenly moist, you can put some row cover over the bed. Just make sure you water them regularly. And then when they do come up, you need to wait till they're a few inches tall and then thin them. So starting out with loose, fluffy soil is good, but they do need to be evenly moist, but not soggy to germinate. And it takes longer than you think. And if they don't come up, plant some more seeds and you will find it easier to grow them in the fall. I've got some that are maybe just peeking out of the soil now. They're maybe a ½ inch tall. They should germinate easily for fall because the soil's all warmed up and happy to receive them.
Okay, next question from Amy Cody. How do you keep aphids and whiteflies from the brassicas?
Row covers cannot be beat. There's 2 kinds of row covers, the kind of floaty spunbound material we're used to, and growing your brassicas from the time you put them in the ground till they're ready is with row covers will do that. There is also getting to be more and more available insect mesh. And you can find it online now, and good garden centers carry it, which is a row cover that looks like a very fine mesh. And the holes in the mesh are tiny so insects can't get in. Leaf miners, moss, all of it can be eliminated. Just you put the cover over them, you tack it down with bricks or stones or whatever, and the plants can go right up under them in their whole growing season. Otherwise, for aphids, there's nothing like good old Safer soap. Can be very good. Also, you will find if you're planting a fall garden, you have less trouble with them than you do in spring and summer, for sure.
Okay. Next question from Anna Muir. She wants to know what the analysis on the fertilizer that you use monthly is.
I can't recall that off the top of my head, but I know it's the 2 that we like. The 2 that we use consistently are Sustain and Dr. Earth. However, you can also use good old fish emulsion and kelp, 1 tablespoon of each per gallon of water, and that's a very good fertilizer to use too. You just have to use it pretty often, and do it in the evening because it's smelly, but the smell will go away. So I would just say, if you buy the fertilizers, read the bag carefully. They all tell the application rate. I'm not trying to avoid the question of what the breakdown is, but I just don't remember. I'd have to go to their website and look.
Understandable. You gave us the brands. We can look it up. Next question, and I've had this happen too. What is the reason when radishes don't develop a bulb?
They could be too crowded. You really do need to thin them out.
I have a suspicion it was weather related. They don't seem to bulb up if it's too warm.
That makes sense. I don't grow them in the summer, so I haven't had that happen, but they will entirely be happy in the fall. So you shouldn't have that problem.
Okay. And then somebody asked whether larkspur seeds require chilling.
No.
Okay, and you had a pansy called Victorian Posy. Is that?
Say again? please.
Victorian Posy pansy, is it edible?
Yes, all pansies and violas are edible. They have a slight taste of wintergreen. I'm not going to say that I would want to live on them, but they add a nice little flavor and color to a salad. All flowers, all pansy and viola flowers are edible if you grow them yourself. I would not eat ones I bought at the nursery, no.
Okay. And then the final question I have here is from Amy Cody. What cover crop would you recommend for a large metal container? The raised bed soil doesn't seem very nutritious and moisture holding for plants.
We sell a cover crop. You can use mustard. You can go to a feed and seed store, a garden store. Most anything will improve your soil, but usually you have, in most cover crops have a legume, a grass, a brassica, a combination of different kinds of plants that will both send roots down, fix nitrogen, and add biomass when you turn them in. Will make a difference. I want to say, if you not about her metal raised bed, but any container needs you to be really careful to feed, especially vegetables. They really need to be fed regularly. I know for people who are growing perennials, it's hard to remember that, but remember a zucchini plant or a kohlrabi wants to make one big fruit and then they are done. And we want them to keep producing and keep producing. So you really need to feed them to get the highest maximum yields. That's particularly true with brassicas. And some people, I've heard a lot of complaints that the broccoli never heads up, it's too small, and so on. And a lot of that is they need to be adequately spaced, nicely mulched, and pampered by being fed regularly.
Okay. Geraldine Albers asks, how do you care for curly kale? Mine is about 4 feet tall. Can I just cut it off, and at what time?
Well, if it's getting 4 feet tall, you've had it in the ground a long time, and I'm assuming you've enjoyed it and eaten it, but it's probably getting kind of tough and leathery. And if you want to encourage it to keep going forever, you can, but I would pull it out and grow another crop. When it's younger, it'll be much more attractive, make the nice florets, but most of all, it'll be tender and sweeter. And this is a good time to do that.
Okay. And one last question from Molly Stone. What soil source do you recommend for the raised beds? Soil or source for that soil do you recommend for the raised beds?
Well, that's entirely a local thing. So I'm not sure I can recommend it, because buying soil to fill raised beds is something you go to your local garden center or, yard where they sell that stuff. So I think I would ask other good gardeners what they've used. It's just that I'm in Santa Cruz and I don't know what's available where she is, but basically look for a trusted source. Ask other gardeners what they like. Certainly members of this group would probably be good people to ask.
Yeah, Molly says she's in Sebastopol. If anybody knows a source, you could reply to her in the chat online. And then one other question from Nancy Schramm. And I've had this problem myself. How do you manage planting the winter vegetables when the summer ones are still in full production, past when the winter ones should be started?
Okay, well, I would want to know what she wants to grow, but I would start them in containers. Like I said, start them, get them going and get them up, so that by the time the tomatoes and peppers or so on, they're ready to go into the ground. Or, it depends. Like if your tomatoes are, right now your tomatoes are probably in full production, but by October, they're probably, winding down. So either you sacrifice something or you start stuff in containers, seed starting flats. You can also transplant them into 3 and 4 inch pots, depends on the plant, whatever, and then plant them out as seedlings when the other plants are ready to come out. That's the best. That's easy enough to do. So on the root crops, you need to start them in the ground. So yeah, you might have to make a few tough choices on that. But these I've recommended a whole lot of cotton ptarmigan greens, and they can be started, in a month or so later, so you can still get them going.
Yeah, I've done that in my garden. It's very satisfactory. It's a great way to grow greens. Just go out there with the scissors and cut your salad. So thank you, Renee. Could you stop your screen share?
Oh, I will now stop my screen share. Thank you. Sorry.
Because I have something to share here. So please don't go away, everybody. Oops. Let's do that. Need to share first. And I can't seem to get to share. Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry. And the reason I'm sharing this slide is Renee has generously agreed to donate one of her current cookbooks, which is called the Renee's Garden Cookbook, where she shared a lot of interesting ideas on how to use the vegetables during her talk, but she has more recipes in this cookbook, as well as advice on growing many of these things. And she's donated one copy that we're giving away, and I chose a name at random for the people at our meeting tonight. And it goes to Nancy Shardell. So Nancy, I believe you're still on. And if you would put your address in the chat, then Renee will be able to send the book to you.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful.
And if anybody else has any other questions you'd like to ask, you can unmute yourself and ask them.
What about, don't forget about the discount.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about the discount. Yes. Sorry. And Renee is also offering a 15% discount, and shoot, I lost the code for that. Well,
it's WHS 15.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll put that in the chat to everybody.
So that's, anybody can use that to get a discount for seeds, and it's good for all time. Everybody can use it once. So if you want to wait and use it later, you can.
The code is in the chat right now, and you can copy that. It is WHS 15. So
I don't see the person who won the cookbook, so make sure I get that.
Nancy, but I didn't see you put an address.
Okay.
If you want, you can also, there we go. Okay. Do you see the address, Renee?
Okay, Nancy.
241 North Clark Avenue, Los Altos.
It's the last thing in the chat, if you can see that, Renee.
Okay, yeah, I can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Again, thank you very much for donating the book. And Nancy, I hope that you enjoy it. And others of you who want it, it is available on her website and you can order it. And I think that's about it, unless anybody has anything.
Okay, well, thank you.
And thank you very much for joining us. As usual, you were a wealth of information. I've been making notes on all the things I want to try, so thank you.
Thanks, Renee.